So we said like we're contacting a lot of suppliers, we're taking a lot of mud out. Now we need to filter it out. We need to find the pieces of gold. The biggest mistake.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ecommerce Coffee Break podcast. In today's episode, we discuss how to boost your margins by fixing the way you source from Asia. With costs going up, tariffs hitting hard, and supply chain issues, getting your sourcing strategy right is super important. Joining me on the show today is Omer Sasson. He is the founder of the Sasson Company and a trusted sourcing and supply chain expert for 7- and 8-figure brands. With over 10 years of experience across Asia, Omer helps sellers cut costs, avoid supplier pitfalls, and scale with confidence. We have a lot to cover, so let's welcome Omer to the show. Hi, Omer. How are you today?
Hey, thank you for having me.
Omer, sourcing, a difficult topic. We didn't have that for a long time on the show, and I think it's very, very important. From your perspective, and you just came back from Asia, what's the biggest mistake online sellers do when they picking suppliers in Asia?
Wow, biggest mistake. I guess the biggest mistake is not having a backup supplier. So you can see I'm providing service to a client that make annually at least $1 million, but this is really at least. So usually it will be 10, 20 million a year and even more. And I serve company even like Coca-Cola, so like across all the range, okay? And if your product is just a giveaway product, it's not a big deal. But if your product actually make profit for you, and you have only one supplier, and then tomorrow something is happen, and things happen all the time, right? Tariff going up, COVID, and then you don't have shipping, or even suddenly your supplier is going through bankruptcy. It's happening. And if you don't have a backup supplier, then it's going to be really bad for you. And I've got a very good lesson during COVID, because in COVID I didn't have backup suppliers. Okay, so I had like one supplier per product, and then COVID hit, and China got locked down for like about 2 months. And then I learned from this. And after this, for every major client I'm working with for a long time, we started to prepare a backup supplier. And then about 1 year ago, even before the election in the US, they started to talk about 100% tariff in China. And since then, I've started to create backup suppliers for whatever product I could. So if there was a supplier in China, a backup supplier outside of China. And then when the tariff went up, there was no any big issue or big deal. We just transformed production to another country, and now potentially we might bring it back to China. But it's very smooth. The problem is most of the businesses and brands, they don't have backup supplier until the moment they really need one. And in the moment you really need one, then you're going to have to rush. But you cannot, because product development, or you need to find another supplier. This kind of things takes time if you want to do it right. So I think this is the number one mistake, not having a backup supplier.
I think it's a very important point that you made there, and I never thought about it. And you're absolutely correct. I mean, that's very, very important. If your supplier falls away, your business breaks, and you stand there without a business without products. Now, I want to take one step back and finding your suppliers. The first supplier, the second supplier, how many ever you need. Obviously, trust is a big thing there. And if you're based in the US or anywhere else and you're sourcing from Asia, that might be a big problem to find the right supplier. You're doing this for a very long time. What's your approach on finding the right company to helping you with sourcing or with the right product, put it that way?
I think finding the right supplier, you do it in few phases. Phase number one, you need to contact a lot of suppliers. Okay. Now, it sounds like, yeah, of course you need to contact a lot of suppliers. But when I say it, usually people think, okay, yeah, we also contacted like 20, 30 suppliers. When we are looking for a new supplier, we will contact few hundred suppliers. For some product, we contact thousands of suppliers. Now, of course, eventually not all of them are relevant. But I just want you to think about it this way, okay? Statistically, if you contact 20 suppliers, there is a big chance that none of them is very good, or their prices is not very good. But if you contact 1,000 suppliers, probably at least some of them are really good. So it's like you go to an area where, there is a gold in the ground, and you're gonna dig and take out a lot of mud. And then when it's outside, you start to picking out the gold. So this is how we work. We contact a lot of suppliers. This is number one, to make sure we put inside our funnel. We call this a funnel, kind of marketing funnel, just sourcing funnel, as many suppliers as possible. This is number one. Now, if you don't do this right, everything after is not going to be worth much. By the way, the second reason we do it is when we work this way, when we contact hundreds, we can really know if the price we got is the best price in the market. And even if it's not, we know it's not the best price in the market, but we choose it. Just for example, I contact a few hundred of suppliers, and I know this supplier have the best, supplier A, just for example, have the best price in the market, and I choose supplier B because of different reasons, trust or other reasons, but I do know what's available in the market. Okay, so this is number one. Number two is about verification and filtering out. So we said like we're contacting a lot of suppliers, we're taking a lot of mud out. Now we need to filter it out. We need to find the pieces of gold. Now, you're in the e-commerce for many years, and you know suppliers in Asia, especially in China, also in India, by the way. You're going to ask them, can you do this product? They will say yes. But how many of them can actually do it? Most of them cannot, right? So you really need to do a verification process, and it's something that's going to take time. You cannot verify the supplier ability in 2 sentences, because you're going to need to ask the same question a few times in different ways to see can actually do it. So this is phase number 2, verification. Phase number 3 is going to be the actual product development and sampling, creating samples. And I think the experienced one does, but the not experienced one coming with the wrong expectation. Like the first sample is not good enough, so okay, this supplier sucks. No, product development, it's something that takes time. You need to make one sample, you need to give feedback and reject it, and improving the sample. So this is phase number 3. And phase number 4, which I always do it, but many other people don't do it, is factory audit, which means we're sending a QC inspector to the factory to check the facility and to understand the ability and the advantages and the disadvantages. You know, there are many cases, it happened to us all the time. Let's say you look for a supplier on Alibaba or Alibaba 1688 or other platforms, and you see the factory look like I don't know, like Wix head office, okay, or Microsoft head office, like huge factory and looks very nice. And then we do the factory audit, and it's like a tiny room, dirty. There is like 2 small sewing machine. So factory audit, because for me, it's really important not just to know the supplier can make the product in a good price. I want to make sure for the long term, it can make a consistent quality, for example. And this is a good example. Like if you want to manufacture bag, okay, a case or bags, and I make a lot of bags. So if the factory is using just 2 or 3 sewing machines, and it make everything kind of manually or semi-manually, there isn't going to be a consistent quality. Each employee is going to make the sewing a little bit different. So there are many kind of details you can see when you do factory audit. So I think this is phase number 4. And I guess phase number 5 will be, and this is coming back to what I said before, backup suppliers. So when you work in this way, you contact a lot of suppliers, you do the sampling with more than one supplier. During the process, you're getting more than one supplier. Now, ideally, you want to proceed to the finish line just before an order with at least 2 or 3 suppliers. And this is what I call a backup supplier. A backup supplier is not just, oh, I talked to another supplier on Alibaba like 2 years ago and he gave me a price. No, I actually saw the supplier, how he makes sample. I check the communication. I check the different criteria that important to me, like production time, blah, blah, blah. And then in the moment of truth, when something happens, I can really switch very quickly.
Makes perfect sense and reminds me on my own story. I also had bags on my store, and I went exactly through the process, finding suppliers, talking to factories, a very painful and very time-consuming process, specifically if you're not in the country. That I think that's why it's so important what you said, that you have to be boots on the ground. You need to have somebody checking on what they're actually telling you. I want to dive a little bit more into profit margins. You mentioned Alibaba. There's a lot of resellers there. They pretend to be the factory, but they're probably not. What's your approach with factories directly? Where do you see the biggest price advantage of working directly with the factory?
Okay, I might surprise some people with my answers. Okay, so I don't think working with factory directly is always a good thing. Sometimes it is. Okay, and I will give you some examples that all of them I saw, again, on the ground in China. Okay, it's not like guessing. So let's say you want to make, let's take a product, I make a lot of it. I make a lot of art and craft products. Okay. And let's say I'm buying from a certain factory in $1 million annually. Okay. And now I want to resell the product. I'm probably going to have a very good price from the factory. I can buy it very cheap and resell it with profit and still sell you in a very good price. But now let's say going to the same factory, you're going as a beginner with a budget of $10,000 for the first order. How the factory is going to look at you. Okay, this is one example. Another example, let's take the opposite example. A factory can make a finished product. It doesn't need any help from trading company. He know how to speak English. He know how to make the packaging. He makes the entire finished product by himself. He have his own QC team, which is very rare in China, but can happen. In this kind of scenario, trading company or agent bring no value. Okay, they just kill your margins. I think it's a little bit take me back to the point I say again and again and again, also on my LinkedIn, whoever follow, that you have to contact many suppliers. Like, I don't like to guess and say this kind of assumptions. You have to work with factory, or you have to speak Chinese in order to get a good price, or many kind of assumptions. No, contact enough suppliers. You will know, you will have the right answer. Okay, so, and then you will see the difference how in some products, trading company can bring a lot of value. In some products, working directly bring a lot of value. I think what's important is whether you work with a trading company or a factory, or work with professionals, somebody who know what they do. Because there are also some very unprofessional factories, there are some very unprofessional trading companies, and the opposite.
That's very interesting. I want to dive a little bit in the dynamic situation right now with the tariffs. If a seller wants to move away from China or as a backup, which countries are the best alternatives?
The hard part here is that unlike China, which is like a production hub for almost everything, you don't have a single country that contain all the different factories like you have in China. So the first thing you have to do is to understand which countries potentially can make your product. So just for example, India can make many wooden products, some stainless steel products. In Thailand, you can make jewelry. In Vietnam, you can make plastics. We help a big toys brand to move from China to Vietnam. Okay, so this is what makes it more complicated and why many people don't do it. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it because it's complicated. It's just harder. So you have to understand which country potentially can make your product, and then you need to dive into the research. Taiwan also provide a lot of alternatives to China. The thing is, Taiwan can be very pricey compared to China, and which is another point. Like, if you move your production from China to a country that is a little bit more pricey, for example, like Taiwan, Japan, Korea, try to look not just how you move your production from China to outside of China, how through this transition I upgrade the product and give more value so I can also sell it with a higher price. I will give you an example. I have a customer that make cosmetic product in China. Okay, they sell very well. It's a cosmetic brand. They do very good work. And through the tariff period, they asked me to try to find a factory in Korea. And we found a factory in Korea. It was like, I don't remember, 10 cent or 15 cent higher compared to China. That's all. But because it's made in Korea, which everyone knows is very good in cosmetics and it's good for branding, they could sell it in about $8 higher. Okay, so they increase the cost in 10 to 15 cents and increase the profit in much more, which is, I think, here's the good point. If you want to move from China to outside of China, don't look at on product price, look at your landed cost, okay? Because sometimes your product price might be a little bit higher, but the landed cost will not be much higher and your profit can be much higher. So try to look how you provide more value through the transition. Okay, it's not just about, I think sourcing is not just about saving 10 cents. It's about increasing profits.
No, makes perfect sense. And I think looking into the numbers is always a good thing. I want to touch on a different topic here because you've spent 10 years, by now more than 10 years in Southeast Asia, and you're very aware of cultural differences. What kind of mistakes do you see Western sellers approaching Asian suppliers? And then in communication, a lot of things can go wrong. What are the biggest mistakes or misconceptions Western sellers have when dealing with Asian companies?
It's a great question, okay, because I think it's probably one of the biggest mistakes Western people mostly doing when working with Asia. So number one is, if we look at Asia in general, is Western people doing business with them as they were doing in their Western countries. So just for example, in Europe, if you will send a supplier an email with all the details of the product, and supplier in Europe, okay, a factor in Europe, and you will ask him, please confirm you can do all the listing above, and he will say yes. It's kind of a contract, right? It's kind of a binding contract or agreement at least. In China, it's worth nothing. So people try to treat Asian supplier as they would treat Western supplier. This is number one. And number two, they look at Asia as a one country, which is like Europe is not one country, right? The culture in Germany and France are totally different. So Asia also, and I'm saying this as somebody that all the time in Asia, I'm living in Asia. The culture, the difference in the culture between China and Vietnam is huge, even though they have a border. And between China to Japan, it's like totally different. Even more, I will say, okay, because I've been living in China in several parts of China. The culture in different provinces in China is totally different. In some places, they will cheat you a little bit more. In other places, they might be more honest. In other places, they might be a little bit more official, maybe even a little bit more Western. So if you go to Shenzhen, which have border with Hong Kong, sometimes they might be a little bit more Western, somehow we can say. In EU, in Zhejiang, it's totally like market approach, like give me the money, I will give you the products, don't waste my time. So you really have to understand there is a culture difference. And the biggest tip I can give, because I cannot teach you the entire culture in 1 hour. I myself cannot know the entire culture, even with 10 years of experience. Always assume you don't understand, and the other side, your counterpart, also doesn't understand. And if you come with this approach, like if I'm saying something and I assume you didn't understand, I will say it again in a different way. I will ask you, did you understand what I just said? And when you said something, maybe my initial response might be to get offended by what you said. But I need to ask myself, wait, maybe he didn't want to offend me. Maybe he said something that in culture it's okay to say. So if you assume you don't understand and your counterpart also don't understand, you will make less mistakes.
I think it's very important. I think that's the most important thing if you do global business is to have an understanding, or not an understanding, but be open to being lost in translation, basically, not knowing about the culture. It just does not work out. Now, the safe path is to work with someone like you, who has the experience, who is on the ground, who has the contacts. Who's your perfect customer and how do you work with them?
So my perfect customer will be probably a brand that make at least 1 million annually. And the reason is usually it's more serious customers and they understand the benefit of like getting results and not just about, oh, we spend this and that money for a service. They care for the result, not just about how much they spent. And the way we work with brands, usually they pay us and we find the suppliers for them, and then they can work transparently with the suppliers. Some other brands also pay us to do the entire supply chain and the entire production and inspection and QC. But it's mostly e-commerce brands, Amazon brands. We work very well with this type of customers.
Mm-hmm. Are there specific, and you mentioned a few before, are there specific verticals or industries you work more with than others? You mentioned cosmetic is one thing, bags is another one.
It's interesting because at first, when I just came to China, I started from textile, even textile raw material. And the more the time passed, I started to learn more and more niches, because you learn something, you becoming an expert, and then you learn a new industry. So we do a lot of cosmetics, supplements, pet supplies. We do a lot of pet supplies. Art and craft and DIY is probably a niche I do for many years. Now we do a lot. Home decoration, even furnitures we do. I guess quite almost everything. I guess what we don't do is the very complex technological products, because for this I have no experience. But right now, most of the products we can do. Also, when you have the right sourcing system, it's not just like learning a new product, it's part of the system. So for me, this is what we do. All the time, we get a new product, we need to learn it. We need to have a strategy how to find it, because for some products, it's not just I need to find the factories that already make this product. Sometimes you need to come with a strategy. Wait, maybe I need to make one piece in one factory, another piece in another factory, and combine them, because this is the way to reduce cost, for example. So it's also about strategy. And another thing we do, which I really like to do, I have to say, we help the little bit bigger brands to build their internal sourcing team and sourcing system. Because I think a brand at some point reach to a size that you want to do things in-house. And many times they will use VAs from the Philippines, which can be great employees, by the way, but they don't have the right experience. So we help them build the right sourcing system and sourcing team and train them so they will be able to do it internally by themselves, which is something I really like to do because I really like training. And I think it's part of the reason why I'm good in what I'm doing, because not just because of my experience, because I know how to train my employees to help me in the process.
No, that makes perfect sense. Now, you already mentioned and answered a couple of questions that I had with the different styles of how you work with clients. But from a merchant approaching you, what kind of homework do they need to do before they get in contact with you?
Well, I guess it's to know what the product they want to do. I don't like to work with clients when they come like, listen, we want to make a table, kind of look something like this picture, but give us all the different table available, and then we will choose. If you, by the way, because the part of doing the right sourcing process, you need to take a specific product, learn it, and then compare it, because you cannot compare green apple to red apple. So they need to come with when they already know what the specific products they want to do and what quality they want, what target price they probably want, or a range, and then we can do the rest.
Mm-hmm. How does your pricing structure work? How do you charge for your services?
So it depends on the product. We charge to find supplier. If we find supplier and you work with him transparently, it's from $3,000 to $4,000. And as part of this, you don't just get the one supplier, you get the entire research we do. So like I said, we contact hundreds of suppliers. So you get the entire research, includes the backup suppliers, which is, I think, is very important. And for training and building a sourcing system and training a team, it's around $12,000. And we have also smaller price point for smaller companies, but this is about the price range. We also have some clients that pay us regularly, and we are like, they outsource us to do their entire sourcing.
I can only vouch for having somebody with the experience on being on ground to help you with that. Otherwise, it's a very, as I said, it's a very difficult process. Not being there, not speaking the language, not understanding the culture, you're basically already losing when you start with that. And sourcing from Asia is important. Sourcing from different Asian companies or countries is, I think, is the way to go right now. So before our coffee break comes to an end today, is there anything you want to share with our listeners that we haven't covered yet?
I guess just say like, come to my LinkedIn. I try to post regularly every day. Value. It's not like sales or marketing. You can just learn. Go to my LinkedIn page. You can see the post, learn. I think even if you already have your own sourcing team and you're confident and you feel I don't need any help, let them read the post. Let them see I make a lot of cheat sheets and stuff. Let them read it. It's gonna help them. So LinkedIn is a good place, and you can always DM me, and we can schedule a 15-minute call, do some introduction, and if we see we can also do some business together, it's gonna be great.
Perfect. I will put the link in the show notes, then you're just one click away. Omer, I think that was a masterclass in sourcing. I hope a lot of people will reach out to you and see the benefits of working with somebody who has the experience. And I hope to talk to you soon and get some updates. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.